for sure. I mean, when I was growing up, it was much more lower middle, working class. And now you go to, especially a place like, Malibu, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just like tech bros.
Or even Montauk. I mean, it's
Montauk. I got priced out of Montauk 2 years after I discovered it.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I deserve this place.
Yeah.
But no, I couldn't afford it.
And the worst part of it is
2 nights.
The worst part of it is you can't even go because of parking regulations. Whereas Malibu, at least you can pull up right up to the highway.
You can pull up at the highway. It's true. But, like to live at a place is very sweet. To walk to the beach is really is extraordinarily sweet and lucky. But, I took it for granted and I left it willingly, like bored and like, okay, I'm out of here. But now I look back and, it's the same in the North Shore. I mean, Benji Weatherly, one of the people I interview, he's like, he grew up in a house at Pipeline that he was renting.
Single mom.
300, waitress mom. Yeah. God, please. And now that's out of the question. And he had a moment where he could have bought that house for 200, 300 grand, and he couldn't put the money together right then.
Yeah.
And now.
That would have been...
Goodbye. It's like Billabong owns it.
Yeah.
It's like these kind of surfwear, apparel companies, multinationals own it.
Yeah.
That's like sad.
What were publicly traded companies?
Exactly.
I mean, that's a weird thing, but it's
very weird.
But so getting back to your wanting to feel like a local almost, or missing that, maybe it's not that nice, actually, being a local now, being in this time period. Because
you're consoling me.
Yeah, no, it's because there's this bombardment of people and change on these breaks, and it's not what it used to be. And so I think actually a lot of locals that's why they get grumpy. That's why they get upset. That's why some even move out because of that.
Well, that was the thing. I went to when I surfed Casino Pier, coming back to this session again in May when that storm came through. Elsa. Yeah. When Elsa came through, I went with a guy who grew up surfing there. And he's a 30-something guy. Here, I'm 61, right?
Yeah.
And this guy grew up surfing there. He's like, when I was here, he goes, there was a strict pecking order, and there was these guys, and I worship these guys. And I said, where are they now? And he goes, they don't surf anymore.
Yeah.
Or if they do, not here. And that made me feel like I feel in a way really fortunate simply to surf still at 60. Forget living at the beach and being a locked in loaded local. I don't really care about that. I don't sincerely care about that. But I do feel a little stab of self-pity sometimes where I go everywhere I go. I'm like having to make my name over and over. But the luxury of being a local is like, oh, there's Thad.
Yeah.
Let him have the wave.
Yeah.
He's not going to fuck it up. And here I've got to that's what I did. I did that wave. You better give me the next one. Over and over.
I grew up 40 minutes from the beach, grew up surfing Long Island, but I never had a home break. Like my grandmother lived in Long Beach. I would spend a lot of time there, but I was never a local. I would never be considered a local there. I would surf Robert Moses and spots to the east, but I would never consider myself a local there either. And I've always had that outsider feeling, even though probably people know me and I'm very friendly and all that sort of stuff. Like I've never felt like a local at a lot of surf spots. I've never felt like that. Even Rockaway, I don't live in Rockaway. I can't claim local status. So it's a weird thing. Like I never felt that. I've always wanted to feel that. And in some ways I do that when as New York as an entirety. I feel like I'm a New York local because I grew up here. But
you can't roll up to any break without running into someone from anywhere from a month ago to like 20 years ago. Like you're always running into people. So you are a local.
But I'm not. I don't live there.
In that transient kind
it's
of
a very transient
way.
thing, and I always feel like I still have to defer to people who grew up there or
who are just there now.
My relationship to localism is that I only see ugly behavior that comes out of it. And so to me, it's like, I don't know. Like I understand the value of it. And I understand this idea of respecting people where that it's their home. But I don't know, I see a lot of entitlements, a lot of really just, really bad privileged behavior. And like, I feel like the idea of localism, if it's your home, then there also has to be some idea. I understand there are a lot of people who come and just use the beach and they leave, and it feels abusive. And I feel like we don't have that culture. Like, for example, you go to Australia. people know how to act on the beach. They know how to take their garbage away. They know how to but they also open it up for it to belong to everyone. So I think there is a sense of ownership, but you still have this idea of locals as well. But everywhere else, I feel like, as a local, they're also, you're kind of a host. And so you're not going to abuse your power. And I feel like there's so much bad behavior and the grumpiness, even Montauk, you see a lot of locals and all they do is complain. What fun is that? So I don't know. I like the idea of being a global citizen where you rely on the moral principles of being a human, of respecting other people and being fair, let other people also surf. Just because you are from there, it doesn't mean you should get every single wave. That's just not nice.
No, obviously. But there is a hierarchy, I think, sometimes. And I have seen localism where it's really done well. There's certain parts where they are protecting the environment of the beach. Like Chile, you have certain people there who are trying to protect, the water quality and fight for the beach access and those types of things. And those people, if you're visiting that place, you should probably defer to them and give them certain rights away because they have had to fight for those spots, and I think that's where localism can be a force for good to a certain extent. Obviously, everything's with checks and balances. It can't run away.
I think it's relative to everywhere because, there are some places where the local is the person who can afford to live there. So, then there are class issues and then the ideas of gentrification and, they're just, and then you go to third world countries. What does that mean to be a local there? It's because of all this colonizing forces of tourism and whatnot, then I understand why that localism also needs to be kind of enforced. So I think it is relative to where it is, but I think just as a straight principle, it's hard to just kind of defer to that for me.
So I want to bring this, kind of tie this back into the book a little bit more, also with the liminal space that you talk
that was
about.
Such a beautiful chapter.
And
the language is so beautiful in that.
It's really interesting how there's this parallel with surfing and addicts and being liminal, being invisible. And I was hoping you could speak to that a little bit because there's this invisibility with surfers. And we talk about locals, right? But a lot of them are invisible to the day trippers, who like in Rockaway, right? There's people who come out from all parts of the city. They don't even notice really the surfers. They're just kind of in the background. They're a painting there basically, and addicts too. And we see them on the streets here, and they are ignored. They are invisible to us as well. And so I found that really fascinating. The parallels there. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, no, that's you speak to it really well right there. But I want to say one thing quickly before we get to that about the environment. Surfers have an interesting bifurcation or division around environmentalism, right? So you have some who are doing beach cleanups and some who are polluting the water with their jet skis and don't give a damn. And that's really that really shows you the addiction. Yeah. Because there are some surfers who is like, hey, I'm going to get mine. I don't give a damn if it's got gas in it or not. I don't give a damn what this is doing to the kelp. I need my rush.
Or the sound that's affecting the animals.
The sound or any of that. And you see the rise of certain forms of surfing that are very heedless in the way of an addiction, right? Even though these guys grew up surfing, or women grew up surfing and should know better, they don't. They do and they don't, right? But their priorities are for the rush. Then you have the more sensitive surfers who are like, hey, let's take care of this. And they also are ambassadors to non-surfers because surfers come out of the water and go, let me tell you about what's going on out there. Yeah. And we also value it so much we lobby for it. So you have Surfrider and you have these coastal communities that are they're environmental. But in terms of addiction, you see a split. Right, you see the motocross dudes, right? Who just like have you ever been out in the forest when you hear a?
Are you kidding? I hear that in my neighborhood.
Right? But for them, they're into it and they're bored and they're 15 or whatever. I rode them too. My family in Alabama there was a connection we had to a guy through marriage who rode for Kawasaki. He put us in a truck, bunch of bugs. We barely survived. I'm lucky I didn't break my neck, but we dominated this forest. God forbid there was some guy out there trying to just get his life together. So I'm as guilty of that when I was 14, and I certainly don't see I do sympathize, and I sympathize with the rush, and I would love for Laird to take me on a jet ski at what you call it, Jaws.
It'd be
I'll
great.
be out there in half a second. Are you kidding me?
An electric jet ski. That
Electric,
was solar
whatever.
powered.
Long as I didn't die.
Yes.
But so anyway, that I think that in other words, the kind of the addiction, the spectrum of addiction, the kind of reality of addiction as such is present even in, or maybe especially in the issues of environmentalism and maintaining the integrity of the coastline, right, and the purity of the water and so forth. But in terms of liminality, yeah, your whole remark about day trippers out to Rockaway and not seeing surfing really and it was Victor Turner who talks about the invisibility of the liminal.
Right.
It's lowly, it's invisible, and it's sacred. Three characteristics, right? And I thought, God, that so describes what it feels like for me when I jog down the beach, past people on the beach who are reading or hanging out, and I enter the water and they're like, where did he go?
Yeah.
What happened? They can't tell, they can't say what I'm doing, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. They can't interpret it, right?
Right.
And I just found that like so powerfully descriptive of the space of being separate and also transitional and also neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Socially and also naked.
Yes.
See, surfing is naked. That's also a weird resonance with tribal liminal rituals. So like, a manhood or a girlhood, a womanhood, rite de passage, which is where the whole concept of this comes from Van Gennep's book, Rites of Passage. And then Turner took it over later and really made hay with it. But the transition where you're neither a girl nor a woman is sacred, but it's also usually kind of reserved and naked. Because you're stripped of your symbols. When you're a girl, you have markings, social markings, and when you're a woman, you have markings. When you're neither one nor the other, you're in a kind of protected realm in which you're basically spiritually naked and you're stripped of your social signifiers, right? And this is so true of surfing.
Yeah.
You take off all your clothes.
Yeah.
Who am I? Am I a tech bro? Am I a professor? Am I a guy who mows lawns? I don't know. I'm just like, I'm out in the water. And I wanted to say, with regard to COVID and depression and all that, the one place, I didn't have to go to commute to the city, last year. Do you know how much surfing I did? I caught every single swell. I was on it like I have never been on it. So, and was there COVID out surfing? Hell no. We weren't wearing masks. No one talked about it.
Yeah.
We didn't know. May as well have not existed. Not on the beach.
Yeah.
Back on the beach, they're all sweating it.
Yeah.
And I was as liberated. What pandemic? I swear to God, it was the greatest thing. And I thought, this is it. This is saying something very essential about surfing.
That's why the surfboard industry just broke all kinds of records in terms of sales. You couldn't get your hands on anything, as well as the supply chain stuff. But everybody was surfing.
Right. There was a huge, apparent, a lot of grumbling among surfers about all the people starting on the West Coast.
Yeah.
You don't notice it here. You can always get off on your own here. I mean, maybe in Rockaway that's not true. But I always feel in Jersey you can just go down to another jetty. Don't complain. Just move. But I never find it so crowded. I'm like, oh, this is crazy.
They also opened up so many beaches for surfing, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Well, they did. But I find it really interesting. You mentioned that we get rid of our markings, right? Like we're in a wetsuit. You don't know who is who in the lineup. And I always found it really interesting how on land, you didn't know who was a surfer a lot of times. There used to be this stigma with being a surfer too. And I knew a lot of professional friends who wouldn't admit to their coworkers or colleagues that they surfed. Even, and there was this hiding of it, this shame of it. And I found it really interesting, that parallel with drug addiction, even how there's this hiding of doing drugs and you don't tell people about it. And there wasn't this acceptance of it. And now in society, I feel like it's become more accepted, both for surfing and to have an addiction. It's not as deviant potentially.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, but I have